So here we are again, the next installment of this beautiful piece of cloth, well made into a kilt. Important distinction there, beautiful versus well made, mostly. Yet it simply doesn't fit the person who commissioned it. So I'm ahead of my other work. I'm slowly working down my very long waiting list, and thank you everyone for your patience. So yes, this I don't have the exact, I can't relate the full history off the top of my head, but the kilt came to him. Perhaps it was presented to him as going to fit him. It does not. So where we are, as it stands, see he's waist 34, hip 39, length 22 and a half according to my measurement system. And again, 22 and a half is the top of the kneecap to the natural waist. So this kilt is 24, so it's only 1.5 inches too long. And again, that I think comes down to the difference between our measuring systems. I measure to the natural waist and then go down 2.5 inches, depending on the physique. Other people go to the natural waist, put the strap and buckle there, which is what's happened here, and then add. Wrong. They've gone to the natural waist and they've added cloth above that and then put the strap and buckle above that indeed. So which is why this thing's hanging too low. And on top of which, if we measure at their buckle strap, it's 35 inches where his waist is 33. And if we get on to my method, yeah, it's 35, almost 35 and a half, almost 36. So looking at it, and you know, it's mostly well made, although I just don't like sewing machines, right? Machine sewn seams. What was annoying me, and what I was privately cursing out this maker, was that I don't know if their side job, they repair shoes, they repair upholstery, they sew carpets, I don't know, but I don't know if you can see the difference in scale between the thread that I use in the right hand and the thread this person's been using in the left hand. It's far too heavy. It's as heavy as linen thread. It's carpet thread. And it's not even natural, it's synthetic, which means its breaking strain is very, very high. And the problem with that is, say for example, so far the workmanship's just fine. Beautiful, in fact. The stitching is very small, and everything else. But the problem is, when stitching that blind stitch, they've only been catching a single yarn with this heavy, heavy thread. So you start pulling at it, and you can see there that there's a bit of yarn. I can feel it with my finger. There's a bit of yarn that's been pulled out of the cloth because my very moderate pressure using my seam ripper, which is cutting this stuff, was enough to pull it out. So there's an example of perhaps someone's standard being too high. You need to grab more of the cloth when you're doing that blind stitch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to carefully ease that back into position, and I hope I'm successful at that. So looking at it, again, beautiful workmanship, and everything I expect to see is done right. But if I just reduce the apron to a 33, I'm going to have an apron of like 14 inches, which is simply too small for a man's kilt. Again, if we're narrower than the horns of the pelvis, we're in tartan skirt country. So at this point, I don't plan to shorten it, right? But what I do plan to do is I'm going to rob a pleat. I'm going to rob 2 pleats from either side, there and there. That will bring the distance across the pleats at the back to 16 inches on the dot, which means the apron can be 17, which is ideal because it's a little more than 50%, which is, frankly, that's the best we could hope for, the best we could plan for. So rob 2 pleats. At this point, I'm not, because this fellow isn't local. He's back east. Ideally, I'd have him come in for, at least one fitting, but I can't have that. So both of us are going to have to be a bit patient. We're going to cross our fingers because worst case scenario, I send it to him in fact, I might want to do this anyway. I send it to him for a trial fitting with my instructions. He tells me, he videos it, he photographs it, and he sends it back, and then I complete it. That might be the course to take, because rather than reduce it in height, because I had a nasty scare a little while ago where a fellow had an atypical figure in that the distance between the widest point of his seat and his natural waist wasn't, it was different from just about every other body I've tailored for in the last close to 50 years. Consequently, even though I'd measured everything right, it didn't look right when it was done. And we found a solution for it, and we were both happy with it, but lessons learned. So what I think I'm going to do, I'm not going to reduce it in height just yet. What I am going to do is measure up from the bottom to the height that he's found, 22.5 inches. And then from that, I'm going to measure, from there, I'm going to measure down 2.5 inches. And I'm going to put, so I'm robbing 2 pleats. The buttonhole is going to be there, right? Straps and buckles here. And it's going to have the sort of rise that we expect, that we see in an old military kilt. Above the strap and buckle at the natural waist, it's going to go up, oh, look at that, 4 inches. Because, again, like the Hippocratic Oath, first, we do no harm, right? So that's what I'm going to do. Next stage here is I'm going to unpick 1, 2, 3 seams. 3 seams on either side to bring it back so that where my fingers are pointing is the first and the last pleat. I'm going to press, give a heavy press to get all of the creases pressed out of this. I'm going to let it sit for at least a day. It's a nice hot, dry climate right now, so it'll dry within a day. And then carry on as before. So I'll, this may well wind up with rather deep, like unusually deep apron pleats, because on top of everything else, I don't want to hack off any cloth. I want to finish this kilt with the same amount of cloth it started with, because we're also looking ahead. We're not falling into the trap of, oh, he'll grow into it, but we don't want to take cloth off that might be needed later should his figure change in 20, 30, 40 years, or should this kilt be passed down, either sold or inherited, to a more stalwart figure, shall we say. So there we go. Let's, I'm cautiously optimistic, just because I'm also superstitious. I'm not going to claim success before it happens. But yeah, there we go. At least, at least the seams, kilt seams, the pleat seams are not, oh God, they are. They're machine sewn. Okay, well, I'm just going to, at least they're machine sewn with a better size of thread. It's not that heavy stuff that I was cursing just a few minutes ago. Okay, thank you, and carry on.